start the meeting, if I may, just to pay tribute to our good friend and colleague, Councillor Tony Robbins, who unexpectedly passed away at the weekend. Tony was a good friend to many of us, widely admired in his community, regardless of political affiliation, a real gent who contributed so much to the community in Wells and the Mendip Hills. I know that we will pay further tribute at full council in due course, but I just wanted us to observe a minute's silence now in memory of Tony. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. So it is a challenging period of time for us at Somerset Council, with a major incident on the Somerset levels emerging through the last fortnight, and looks like it's going to be carrying on for some considerable time. I just wanted to say thank you to all our staff publicly who are working so hard on supporting residents there, and our partners in the Environment Agency, the Internal Drainage Board, the NHS, Police, Fire Brigade, and all the voluntary sectors that are stepping in to that space. It's an ongoing and very worrying situation. We were pleased to welcome the Minister Hardy for flooding to Somerset yesterday. She only had a brief period of time to spend with us, but it was she did take away some very key messages about what Somerset needs in the way of a long-term plan, the infrastructure we need, particularly around pumping at Northmoor and Dunball, to be able to get water away from people's homes, people's livelihoods that are being so badly impacted. Our thoughts are with those residents whose mental health, I know, is particularly under strain at this incredibly difficult time. Also, we had the final local government financial settlement today. We're still number crunching on that. I know there are a number of factors that are involved in that we're just trying to understand the complexity. And I just want to thank the finance team for their very speedy work on getting that over the line. And we also had a very positive meeting with the Minister for Devolution yesterday, and we're expecting some interesting announcements shortly, but we're not quite sure what they're going to say. So watch that space as well. So it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time. So it's only executive lead members present in the room that are taking decisions at this meeting, and others in attendance are here to provide advice. There are no planned fire drills today. In the event of a fire alarm, please follow the fire exit signs and congregate in the car park. If anybody present might need assistance in exiting the building, then please let one of the Democratic Services team know. The agenda and papers have been published on the Council's website in advance of the meeting, and the Council recognises the importance of striking a balance between providing opportunities for the lawful expression of views, any unacceptable behaviours or actions that cause disruptions can lead to our meetings being adjourned. And the Council will be making a recording of this meeting and will be published in due course. So today's meeting is being run using a hybrid format. So the executive lead members of our key officers are physically present in the room here in County Hall. Other elected members and officers are physically or remotely on the meeting, and the meeting is being broadcast. And therefore, other members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely. If you are online, please avoid the chat function if you at all can, only for the purposes of the meeting. And if you do need to speak, please use the hands raised function if you are able. Please say your name before speaking, and please make sure your microphones and cameras are turned off when you're not speaking, and say your name at the start of when you speak. Do we have any apologies for absence, please? There are no apologies for absence, and we have the minutes of two of our meetings on the 3rd of December and the 7th of January. Are there any comments or concerns on those 2 minutes? Councillor Lysham.
Thank you, Chair. And just one comment that we referred to full council in February, which of course now has changed to March, but it was correct at the time when the minutes refer to. We may add an after note in the minute to put the revised date of full council in.
Okay, that's duly noted. With that asterisk, that's proposed by Councillor Lysham, seconded by Councillor Shearer. Those in favour, those against, that's clearly carried. And are there any declarations of interest beyond those declared as memberships of city, town and parish councils? Not seeing anything. Okay, so we move on to our public question time. We've got a number of public speakers this morning. And first of all, can I invite Mr. Michael Davis to speak, please? Okay, so Mr. Davis is not here and not on the call. Please, can I have the advice of what we normally do in this situation? Do we just send the written answers? Yeah, I'm aware that there's a number of questions there, and some of them will be of public interest, but maybe worth us publishing them as well. So secondly, we've got Mr. Pete Burgess. Not seeing Pete Burgess in the room. Online? Again, not in the room or online. And similarly, we will respond in writing to that question. And we have Daisy May to speak. And we've been very pleased to have Daisy May speak before. Daisy, welcome. Please take your time, Daisy.
Young people's voices.
She chose the speeded up version. Apologies.
How are young people's voices being included in decisions about the designated school grant when those decisions affect our education's well-being and future?
Thank you so much, Daisy May. Really important question, and thank you for coming along and raising it. You're very brave to do so, and we do thank you for your question. And I'd like to invite Councillor Heather Shearer to respond.
Thank you so much, Daisy May. I have to say that is a short question, beautifully delivered, but a really important one. and I'm really glad to hear it. Let me read out, hopefully as well as you did, I'll read out my response to you if that's okay. So thank you for raising this very important subject, that we should be ensuring that children are included in our decision making in children's services. It's really important for us and everybody who works with children and young people. We have a youth forum for all young people that looks at different topics online. We have groups that meet face to face for children who are in care and young people who have left our care. For children with special educational needs and disabilities, to be able to, the idea is that they're able to tell us what they want for their education and their care and their help. So in order to get to hear from them, we have the Unstoppables group, which is great. That's normally for children over 13. And we're recently starting work with younger children with special educational needs in their schools. We realised that was a bit of a gap starting at 13, so getting in early is better. We've recently started, I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm going around in a circle. By going there and listening to them, what we really need to understand is what they need to be different for us, our children with special educational needs, to feel comfortable within their school. That's one of the purposes for going in that way. We don't currently have listening groups for children who don't go to school. We know that that's a gap. We know we need to work on that. So we understand better what these children want for their education, care and health. Every 2 years, we do a really big project to collect views from children. Most schools do this survey, which asks questions about lots of things, about health and actually about how children feel, which is really important to know what they think and what they feel. Last time we had over 5,000 children who answered questions. Hopefully they will do the same again this year too, because it's a really good way that we can understand and get an understanding of children's lives and what's important to them. So thank you. See, I didn't do that as well as you did, Daisy May. I was stumbling a bit, but thank you for doing that and thank you for asking such a good question.
Thank you so much for the question and for the response. Just to add to that, I'm really looking forward to meeting with our newly elected members of the Youth Parliament as well. I think it's really important that we encapsulate the voice of young people in all ages and backgrounds within our decision making. Thank you very much. And moving on now to questions from councillors to the executive. I've got Councillor Caroline Ellis to speak first. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning, Bill. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, thank you.
Fabulous, thank you. So this is like a four-parter, very long, I'm afraid, about the topic of severely disabled people who've migrated to Universal Credit and their support under the council tax support scheme. So first part is, what progress have we made since full council on Wednesday, the 17th December last year, towards creating a special transitional protection provision, which within the exceptional hardship scheme for 26-27, this would be for disabled people of working age who've migrated from income-related ESA to universal credit with limited capacity for work-related activity. So we agreed that officers would go and investigate such a scheme. Secondly, would the executive agree with me that sorting that out alongside withdrawing or suspending the payment demands from the current financial year for this cohort of disabled people has become all the more urgent, given that on the 9th of January this year, the High Court granted a disabled Somerset resident, Andy Mitchell, permission to proceed with a judicial review, challenging the lawfulness of our council tax reduction scheme on the grounds of discrimination, disability discrimination, breach of the public sector duty and irrationality. And according to the law journals, it will be argued, firstly, that the scheme unlawfully discriminates against disabled people because it treats the disability-related elements of universal credit as if they were spare income. Secondly, that we fail to consider properly the impact of our scheme on disabled people and other protected groups when designing and operating it and when making the decision in the claimant's case. And thirdly, it will be argued that it's arbitrary and therefore irrational to disregard all the income of someone on legacy means tested benefits, yet to take into account the equivalent disability related elements of universal credit. And in the context of a system that requires consideration of financial needs, it will be argued it's irrational for a person's entitlement to change radically when their financial needs have not changed. Thirdly, would the exec agree with me that we should proceed with immediate policy changes and emergency relief to avoid this arbitrary discrimination and safeguard the independence and well-being of the severely disabled people of working age in question, as well as ensuring, because we're going to review it, the new scheme for 2027 avoids such discrimination. And finally, does the executive appreciate that doing the right thing here should not actually have a negative financial impact on the council, given that if you deprive disabled people of income needed to maintain independent living and dignity, all that will do is lead to increased costs to the adult social care system, and that it would be a waste of scarce resources to be taking enforcement action against vulnerable people for bills they can't pay, and indeed a waste of resources to contest such a strong case. Thank you.
Thank you, Caro, for the question. I pass on to Councillor Liz Lishon to respond.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Caroline, for your questions. The exceptional hardship policy for 26-27, so next financial year, was adopted at full council on the 17th of December 2025, with added reference in section 2.1 to those transitioning onto universal credit, making it clearer that assistance through this scheme is available to this cohort of residents. Officers are currently working on establishing the scrutiny task and finish group to consider both the council tax reduction and the exceptional hardship policies for 2027-28, where appropriate amendments can be made. The scheme continues to be in place to financially help mitigate exceptional circumstances causing financial challenges to our residents and continues to be means tested. Assistance is available to our residents where help may be needed to complete an application. Somerset Council is robustly defending the judicial review, and it is being handled by our legal team. The council tax reduction scheme will be subject to a full consultation during summer this year, 2026, and reviews will be carried out accordingly on areas of review with the assistance of the scrutiny task and finish group. The mitigation through the exceptional hardship scheme, based on a means test, is still the appropriate route for those who are facing financial challenges and are in exceptional circumstances. To further demonstrate our commitment to the most vulnerable residents, we will be recommending to full council, now in March this year, that a further £2 million is set aside to cover any increased demand in 2026-27. And I would add to that figure of 2 million is in addition to the funds allocated from the Crisis and Resilience Fund, formerly known as the Household Support Fund. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lishon, for the response. I would really just add the peculiarity that for pension age people there is a national scheme, and for working age people every individual council is working out their own scheme. And I think there is a piece of national legislation that needs to be looked at how that works, because if you look at the way that councils across the country are grappling with this issue, there are no right answers here. It's a very difficult question, and if we could have that settled on a national basis, I think it would be better for all councils concerned. And I've certainly asked our MPs to advocate for that in Parliament. Okay, Councillor Diogo Rodriguez. Thank you, Caroline. Councillor Diogo Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. Over 3,700 people across Somerset signed our letter calling on you to give residents a say on any council tax increase above the 4.99% referendum limit. And I thank them all for signing our letter and our campaign. And I appreciate the comments that leaders made about how things have moved since that campaign started. The people of Somerset have fired a clear warning shot at this administration to get your house in order before you go after theirs. From the hundreds of comments we received, the majority of people felt that this administration was very good at wasting money and making poor decisions, and they're not prepared to be any poorer because of it. So I welcome the government's decision on council tax, which would have added over £200 to some household bills.
Sorry, I've had a point of order raised that you're asking a question that isn't the question that you've submitted.
No, I haven't asked.
And you're making a statement. So could we move to the question, please?
I'm getting to the question. I'm just giving some new background as a result of recent bit of announcement from government. The government refused the increase, and there's still a £33 million budget gap in the finances. So the question really is, and what I'm trying to understand as part of the submitted question, which I've put to you, is if this council was truly desperate for that additional council tax income, that £33 million black hole still, would you not be prepared to ask the people of Somerset if they were willing to pay a little more? So the question I have submitted is, will you commit, therefore, that before any future proposal to increase council tax above the 4.99% referendum limit, that you will give Somerset residents a say, instead of bypassing them and running to government to make that decision for you?
Okay, I'll ask Councillor Leyshon to respond to the question that you've asked.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you know, over a number of years, successive governments have transferred the majority funding for local government from central to local government itself in the form of council tax. This council has, through decisions by predecessor authorities, a lower level of council tax than its closest comparators and lower than the assumed or notional level in the government grant formula. In order to correct this, the council explored with government the opportunity to bring its council tax closer to that notional figure in order to provide the right level of funding rather than address further cuts to services. Government informed us this week, as the leader has already expressed, that they do not support this approach and that the council will be expected to remain within the nationally agreed maximum of 4.99% used to calculate core spending power. That is the 2.99% plus the 2% adult social care precept. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leyshon, and thank you so much, Councillor Rodriguez, for your letter that was submitted at 7:41 this morning. Yeah, no one wants to increase council tax, but we wanted to explore as part of those negotiations all options, including up to the assumed level that government has set. These are complex negotiations with MHCLG. Do not just include council tax. There are a wide range of points that we put to government and our MPs put to government, including about the disregard for rurality in their calculations, which has been an issue that's been raised by myself, our MPs and the County Councils Network. And the County Councils Network has also lobbied very hard on the SEND deficit situation, and as their national spokesman, I've been quite heavily involved with that. We do appreciate that you might feel the need to oversimplify those negotiations with a crowd-pleasing petition. It does nothing to resolve what is fundamentally the problem, which is the system of funding local government finance is broken, and we're trying to make a broken model work. And that's where we need to have local councils all over the country working together to challenge the government to get a long-term solution to local government finance. We can't go on funding social care out of a tax on 1991 property values. I've been saying that repeatedly as a message to government, and I will keep advocating for that which will get us the best deal for Somerset residents. Councillor Denton.
Thank you. Could the executive explain how the council is identifying and mitigating the unintended impacts of council tax policies on people who are paying council tax twice, not through choice, but because of circumstance? Councillors have been contacted by residents who are temporarily living in Somerset for work, for example, those providing essential labour and expertise at Hinkley Point, who are paying council tax both in Somerset and on their permanent home elsewhere in the UK. Councillors have also heard from residents who, following the death of a parent, are liable for council tax on a vacant family home while it is being sold, in addition to their own primary residence. In both these cases, these individuals are not deliberately owning multiple properties, yet they are being doubly impacted at a time when council tax rises are already placing significant pressure on household finances. And then the part two is just what consideration has the executive given to whether this creates a punitive or an unfair outcome, and are there any exceptions, discretionary relief, or policy flexibility the council is exploring to address these situations? Thank you very much.
Councillor Lyson to respond.
Thank you very much. We are careful to apply council tax policy fairly and to support people facing unavoidable extra costs. When somebody becomes liable for council tax after the death of a parent, as you have referenced, national rules already provide exemptions during probate and for a period afterwards while the property is being sold. These protections recognise that this liability isn't a choice, and we apply them fully. The situation for people temporarily living in Somerset for work is different. While we value the contribution of workers, including those linked to Hinkley Point C construction, maintaining a home elsewhere while choosing to work here is ultimately a personal economic decision. While living in Somerset, they benefit from local services, so it is appropriate that council tax is paid on the property they occupy. Additional discounts for work-related second liabilities would be inconsistent and would add financial pressure at a time, as we know, when the council's resources are already stretched. We will continue to apply all statutory exemptions and keep policies under review, but we do not believe extra relief in these circumstances would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not actually sure there was an unintended consequence. I think that was part of the policy, but I'll stand corrected if anyone can provide evidence otherwise. I'm going to repeat a phrase: broken model of local government finance, because this is another symptom of where we are seeing council tax as an inadequate means of maintaining local government. I think that is the broken model that we all need to try and fix. Councillor Tom Power.
Thank you, Chairman. This council has been taken to court again, not by parents fighting for their children, but this time by a disabled man because of the financial hardship you've caused him. From 2022 to 2023 to 2024 to 2025, over 150 special educational needs cases were taken to the tribunal, and most of the time this council lost the case. The total legal fees of cost of this council costed this council over £500,000. In the same period, this council had to pay over £380,000 in total to hundreds of residents following SEND complaints.
Councillor Power, I'm really sorry, but SEND isn't the topic of your question.
I was giving a bit of background to the question.
Okay, so let's be really clear about the standing orders. You can ask questions, not give speeches.
Right,
so, okay, so can we proceed with the question?
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
So, in light of the judicial review proceedings brought by Somerset Council, by a Somerset resident, Mr. Andy Mitchell, who is disabled and who, under the former council tax reduction scheme, paid no council tax due to his disability-related benefits, but who now receives only £2 a week reduction under the current scheme. So, my question, I don't know if you want to take it on block, but I can read them out straight away, or if you want to take them individually.
On block, please.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Question 4A, what financial provision has the council made to cover the potential costs arising from this judicial review, including legal costs, officer time, and any risks on refunds or compensations should the scheme be found unlawful? Question 4B, What assessment has been made on the council's potential financial exposure in the court were to quash the current scheme, including the cost of reverting to the previous schemes and reimbursing affected residents? Question 4C. Given the High Court's decision in the Trafford case, where a council tax reduction scheme was quashed for being unlawfully discriminatory and irrational in its treatment of disabled residents' income, what assurance can be given that Somerset Council scheme is materially different and legally robust? Question 4D. Is the council confident that this has been fully complied with its public sector equality duty? And can it confirm what equality impact analysis was undertaken specifically in relation to disabled residents moving from legacy benefits to universal credit? And finally, question 4E. Finally, will the council commit to reviewing or amending the scheme proactively to avoid repeating the errors identified in the Trafford case rather than risking an adverse court judgment? Thank you.
Councillor Lynshon to respond.
Thank you very much. I'll give a verbal response now and then a written response will follow. The council is continuing to assess the merits of the claim you refer to and to prepare its arguments that it acted in line with the law and its public sector equality duties. The council is not permitted by law to change a scheme in year, and for any future year, it must design scheme options, consult meaningfully on members' preferred scheme, agree through normal governance a new scheme, and allow time for claimants to be notified of their household entitlement through council tax billing, a process of at least 6 months. So full council approved the 27-28 scheme on the 17th of December last year, as I've already referenced, and it is this scheme that will be implemented. As part of its annual review process, the council is establishing a task and finish group, as I've already referenced and you know, to review its priorities for 27-28, ensuring, as always, the inclusiveness and the public sector equality duty are fully considered. So, sorry, the scheme that was approved on the 17th of December, it should say the 26-27 scheme. It's from April 26 through to March 27. So the work that will be completed will be for the following year, 27-28. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question and for the response. And moving on to Councillor Lucy Trimnell, who I believe is online. Good morning, Lucy.
Good morning, Chairman, and apologies for not being with you. I've had a really horrible cold.
Thank you for not sharing.
I didn't want to bring it in with me. I hope my voice will last long enough. And my questions are regarding the rapidly deteriorating condition of the roads in Somerset. It's not just roads in my division. The residents I represent are travelling beyond Wincanton and Bruton, but are finding certain roads increasingly risky to use and costly too, as judging by responses to a recent Facebook post, damage caused by road surface defects to vehicles varied anywhere between £200 to £800. The A359 between Bruton and Nunney is in a particularly bad condition, and simply carrying out pothole repairs is like trying to darn a pair of fishnet tights. This often dangerous and winding narrow road needs a complete resurface. It's not a safe place to stop with a blown tyre because there's nothing but high hedges, high verges that are cut out of the edge of the road. And so if you get a flat tyre, you're going to have to wait in your car and hope you don't get hit. A couple of people have told me they've reported this stretch of road as dangerous, but have been told that action is not required and there are no safety issues. I'm telling you there are some serious safety issues for all users, and my particular concern actually is for emergency vehicles as well, because if they're put out of use by a pothole, you need to understand these potholes are in the tyre track positions, and where the road narrows at certain points where you're passing other vehicles, you cannot miss them. And so sorry, someone's just tried to call me in the middle of this. Am I still on?
Receiving you loud and clear.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So anyway, I'm concerned about if there's a call out, urgent interventions might be delayed and lives will be put at risk. Now, in addition to this, where we have potholes and people report potholes, they say there's a pothole here, but there are loads of them. Seems only one gets repaired, and repairs aren't lasting. And people are asking what happened to it's bitumen that used to be put around the pothole repairs that doesn't seem to happen now. And so very, very quickly these repairs break down. So I've got 5 questions about the cost effectiveness of repairing all the potholes in the vicinity rather than fixing one at a time. People are being told that reporting defects that damage road surfaces are not dangerous when they are. Why is that happening? Why are so many completed repairs failing again, sometimes within weeks? Does anyone monitor the quality of the repairs to ensure that they're effective? With people spending hundreds of pounds on vehicle repairs due to road-related damage, can you give an idea of the proportion of damage claims which are successful for those who apply? Is there a budget for this, and how are they assessed? And finally, an invitation for Richard Wilkins. I wondered if he'd be prepared to come on a drive with me along the A359 and around Bruton and Wincanton and see how bad our roads have become. There are more defects than anyone has time to report, and I would bring a thermos flask of tea and I'll make a cake.
Thank you, Lucy. I think we'll all sign up for that site visit. And I'll take your word on the fishnet stockings, not owning any myself. Anyway, Councillor Wilkins to respond.
Thank you for the question. As with other parts of the country, the recent cycle of wet then freezing conditions has led to a sudden deterioration in many roads. We're also dealing with a major incident triggered by Storm Chandra. And in the past few weeks, an unprecedented number of road defects, which will include potholes, blocked drains and other highways issues, have been reported, and the highways teams are currently working hard to repair these. And I'd like to just mention the team that are working are very much involved with the response to the storm and the major incident, and they've been working really hard across the time to get these defects sorted, but also in relation to the storm and the major incident. But I have issued an all-member briefing on the situation, and I've met with our contractor Kier yesterday to discuss progress. We do proactively inspect all our roads, but we also rely on the public to report problems to us. This is because we've got 4,100 miles of roads to look at, which is the equivalent of between here and Kathmandu. To put it into some perspective, the amount of roads in Somerset that we have to deal with. So it is really important that when potholes, which are forming so quickly at the moment, they get reported by the members of the public, and we do our hardest to get to them. So we aim to repair on a timescale of between 2 hours of them being reported and 28 days, dependent on the level of risk and the location. It's not always possible to meet these time frames during times of high demand, but we do prioritise our response based on the level of risk to the public, and we've doubled the number of gangs on the ground dealing with these issues. It's not practical or affordable to repair all other potholes in the vicinity of where reported safety defect, although our officers can instruct multiple repairs where it is clear this would be the most cost-effective response. Often, where there are incidents of multiple potholes on a section of road, that are not large enough to require action as safety defects, there are plans to resurface or treat the road as part of our annual programmes. I will send a written response to cover details of your other questions. And I'd just like to say I do know the section of road you're referring to very well, and I am aware of the road conditions, and I'm always happy to meet with members, but I will point out that it does require cake. So thank you, Lisa.
Okay,
I'm
thanks for
committed now.
thanks for the question, Councillor Criminal. And
Thank you.
I've been haranguing Councillor Wilkins about my potholes as well. I expect he's had all divisional members concerned. Just a thank you to the team in Highways that are doing the best they can in the situation that we find ourselves. Yeah, we've got a pothole pandemic and perfect pothole weather. With a freezing snap and then a wet snap coming through at the moment. Councillor Slocum, I see you've got your hand up and we don't have a question for you. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Leader. May I ask a question?
Really, no.
I've not been well. I've not been well.
I am really sorry, but if we allow one, I'll have to allow 110, and you'll appreciate that's difficult. But pop me a message with your love, and I'll pick it up. Right?
Okay.
Thanks, Jill. Okay, so we move on to item 6 on the agenda, the Executive Forward Plan. Any comments or questions from lead members or associates, please? I'll go to Liz Lisham first.
Thank you. I just want to bring colleagues' attention to item 12 on the forward plan, where the Crisis and Resilience Fund replaces the Household Support Fund. Although it's a slightly reduced amount for Somerset for next year, it is now for 3 years, which is welcome. And the government has changed the focus to prevention, which of course fits well with our own priorities. So just asking that colleagues take note of that. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting that one. Anything else from lead members or associates? Any other members? Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you very much, Chair. Looking on the forward plan for March, I see the deferred planning motion reports scheduled to come back to the executive next month. I was hoping if we could have a quick update, though, as to the work currently going into the report and clarity on recent updates that talk about the triage process for enforcement cases. And also looking for a quick update on the plan for further cross-party member engagement. So something specifically mentioned within the plan, but aside from a few member briefings that have happened over the last month or so, don't yet appear to have commenced.
Looking across at Michael, Chris has picked his microphone up. Do you want to just perhaps do a few brief comments and then pick up in writing later?
Yeah, so we will respond in writing. The report is being drafted with the support of Democratic Services. And I know Alison Blom-Cooper, as the Chief Planning Officer, is engaged with that, so we'll have to pick up those separately, I'm afraid.
Okay, in due course. Okay, nothing else on the forward plan. So that is for noting, which brings us on to agenda item 7, which is the 25-26 General Fund Revenue Budget Monitoring Report, Q3, end of December 2025, and the pages are 43 to 160 on your hymn sheets. Councillor Liz Lisham to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. As long as you don't expect me to sing this, I think you'd be disappointed. So although this report, like the HRA Q3 report, is now separated in this quarter from performance and risk, for which I apologise. However, that does allow us to see the continuing work of budget setting in the context of the current financial year, which I think is very helpful to us. There is some good news in this report. However, we do remain very concerned about the service overspend of 6.367 million, particularly the demand for and cost of placements for Somerset's children, also housing and waste services. From the local government final settlement, which we've already referenced this morning, we now know that government will cover 90% of the SEND accumulated deficit to the end of March 26, so this financial year. The high needs block figure is the one that we have to look at, and that is forecast to be approximately 116 million by the end of this financial year. So we are taking steps to cover the remaining 10%, which will stay under the statutory override, and then also address deficits accumulating in the next 2 financial years, where we do not yet know how government will respond. So, colleagues, it is vital that as executive colleagues and all members must understand that the high need stability grant, that's what it's called for the 90%, will be on the basis that we have a local SEND reform plan. There is no way that government will just hand over grants for 90% of that accumulated deficit. So in phase 1, that's in 26-27, every local authority with a SEND deficit will be eligible for the high needs stability grant, covering 90% of the high needs related DSG deficit accrued up to the end of 25-26. Grants will be paid from autumn 2026. To access the grant, each local authority must submit and secure approval for a local SEND reform plan. These plans must set a clear pathway towards an inclusive SEND system aligned with national reforms involving schools, health partners, early years providers, and post-16 institutions. So when I talk about us taking into account the remaining 10% of the accumulated deficit, we are able to consider taking an action of creating a new DSG reserve, which you'll see in the recommendations this morning, because we have reduced the need for borrowing in the current and next financial years. And that decrease in borrowing reduces the percentage of the revenue budget that must be committed to the cost of borrowing. So, Chair, if I may, I would like to hand over to our Section 151 officer, Clive Heapy, to give us more detail on this report and its many appendices. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for that introduction, and I think you've covered most of it. It's been a pretty tumultuous week, I think, in terms of trying to understand everything that's going on, and it's good to have some good news in terms of where we are on Q3. The aim has been to drive costs down while still providing the best services that we possibly can as a council. That always has to be our aim, and you've heard me say before that it's important we get back to a balanced position. This report is very much a tale of 2 halves. It's very much service spending still going over and Treasury costs bringing things back under. Overall, therefore, good news. And that does allow us the flexibility to put some money aside towards the 10% that we're expecting to have to pay towards the DSG. So that's the headline news. Within the overspend figures in services, there's a net underspend on adult social care of around 4.5 million. And the director can bring out any changes on that. And there's a net overspend of around 11.5 million on children's services, which is sort of holding at that kind of level, which is good to see, at least it holding. But that creates an overall negative position when taken with other services. And I would like to thank Chris and Community and Environment for bringing that figure back in, because at Q2 that was showing a large negative variance, and now it's come back in. So thank you to Chris and the team for doing all the work to bring that one back in. So overall, very pleased that we're seeing some action, but clearly there's some very definite pressure areas for us around children's placement costs and around home to school transport as a result of SEND numbers, and both the director and the lead member may like to speak about that in a moment. So with that in mind, then, on Treasury, we've taken a long look at capital expenditure, as I promised that we would do. And as you know, I've been advocating a process of really trying to limit the amount of capital expenditure, both within year and for next year, focusing on schemes which have got a health and safety implication, schemes that we have to do because of legislation requirements, and schemes that we have to do or want to do because they've got an investor save component, i.e. spending capital money now will release revenue further down the line, and there is a payback period then on those. So by doing that and by focusing on the other side on not borrowing but maximising all the grants that we can have, maximising the use of Section 106 and community infrastructure and infrastructure levy, maximising the use of capital receipts, we can keep the borrowing cost down. So together with prudent assumptions that had been taken on Treasury, which we always do, it's always a very volatile area that can go wrong very, very quickly. But I think now we're late enough in the year to not think there's going to be that level of volatility. Happy therefore to recommend that we can release around 14.5 million of Treasury costs back into the system. So that again, when the two are taken together, that net position then is giving us that net underspend position, which is excellent news. Attached to that, I'd ask you to note, it's in the recommendations at paragraph E, note the council tax and business rate collection rates, which are important to see for us. We're slightly under on council tax collection at the moment, slightly over on business rates, which is good. So we're continuing to monitor that. The recommendation is also to look at the levels of debt, which continue to fall for us. We paid more debt off this year than we borrowed, and we see that continuing in the future. And you'll have heard me said in relation to the medium-term financial plan, the aim is to get that figure down as low as possible. The SIPFA benchmark is 10% of your net revenue budget, and we're aiming towards 7.5%, trending towards 7.5%. So really good news that that's part of the control mechanism that comes into play. When it comes to dedicated schools grant reserve, Councillor Lations very aptly read out the requirements. The 90% that's been announced is for dedicated schools grant balances up to the end of 25-26. No more than that at this moment in time. Can we assume that we'll get more in future years? I suspect it'll be annually for the next 2 years. It will roll on at a similar level, but it will be very much linked to the recovery plans and deficit recovery plan, or reform plan, I think it's called, right, that has to be produced, and the financial advisor from DFE will continue to monitor our progress. So actually demonstrating we've got a handle on SEND cases, that we're managing those in the best possible way, that we're managing the deficit management plan and bringing that home according to what we took to council in September last year, are all critical things to make sure we access the full 90%. Government haven't said what happens if you don't, and they haven't said it's going to be less than 90%. I guess that's the hint, but there's nothing in there. But we don't want to find that out, really, do we? We want to get to a situation where there is no question that we've got this under control and managing that. But on the basis of a deficit of a forecast deficit now rising to £116.8 million by the year end, 10% of that, and I don't need my calculator, it's going to be 11.68 million to set aside to cover that deficit off. So this report is suggesting that of that 8 million of underspend this year is allocated towards creating that reserve, which is going to take the pressure off next year and means we don't have to hit revenue budgets, or later this year or next year, we don't have to hit them. And should there be further underspend, should we be able to get service costs down and or release more treasury funds by the year end, I would hope to allocate more within that figure and be coming to you at year end and suggesting we cover the whole lot with underspends. That remains my aim. I can't say we're in that position yet of doing that. But I think it's prudent management, and I think when we're looking to government and looking to EFS applications going forward, government are looking for us to do prudent financial management, and I think where we are now at Q3 demonstrates an approach to prudent management. And I have a call with government at 12:30 today, which I'll be reflecting on this with them as a demonstration that we are serious as a council about getting our spending under control and about getting our expenditure overall within our income levels. So I think that's probably all I want to say at this point in time. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Clive specifically? And then I just want to talk to some service areas around the appendices. So Mike first, please.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks, Clive. I'm sure you've explained this and I've just failed to grasp it, but if we just go back to the basics, the government is offering to fund up to 90% of the deficit that's built up. That kind of sits off our books at the moment. Does the existence of that deficit have a revenue implication in as much as are we paying interest on that? So when that goes, what's the, if that's how it works, how much does that yield back into the revenue budget because we're no longer servicing that debt?
That's a really good question, Mike. And yes, we are losing interest because we are spending the cash on that deficit at the moment. We estimate at the moment we're losing around 3 million a year, but that's going to be rising up to close to 10 million a year if we roll this out all the way up to 29-30. Before that was the estimate beforehand. Getting 90 million pounds worth of grant in the quarter 3 effectively will mean that we then don't, that money will be cash in the bank for us, and hopefully we'll start to recover that position for us. So we're hoping we can cover that off, and that will be brought out in the medium-term financial plan. It's one of the movements you'll see in there. But a really good question, and of course, just reflecting on going forward for 26, 27, 28, we've got to keep that under control again, because we'll see that deficit rising at the start of the year. That'll take up some of our cash reserves to fund it, and hopefully if government follow the same 90% pattern, we'll get that back in again in quarter 3 or quarter 4. So you'll see a bit of a movement in cash flow up and down.
My question, Clive, is obviously we're seeing where we are at the end of quarter 3. You said about communities and place obviously bringing in their budget. We have, however, in quarter 4 declared a major incident that's going to have an impact, I imagine, on our budgets and the way that we're doing our services. Can you remind me, I'm not 100% sure, do government give any extra money when a major incident is declared, or is there any money that we can access? I know Sarah Dyke brought down the minister yesterday to see the impacts of the flooding, but it would be good to understand whether there's any financial support available, because we are seeing that impact.
There is the Bellwyn scheme available to us that we can apply to. I think from memory the limit is 1.2% of net budget that we have to spend before we can start to access that. So it's something we'll be keeping our eye on and taking a look at the costs we're incurring. But certainly if it goes above that level where we can access it, then yes, absolutely we will be.
Okay, thank you. Any other general questions? And if not, I'll kind of work alphabetically through the appendices. Well, he's not a member of the executive yet at the moment, so I was going to suggest that the executive lead member for adults goes first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to talk through briefly about our report this month. There is actually I think it's difficult to read it correctly. What it's really saying is that the forecast of the underspend for us in quarter 2 was 4.75 million, and it's increased now to 5.346 million in quarter 3. It's not worded quite like that, but that's what it means. These underspends that we're experiencing, I have to say that we've had a very nasty flu outbreak over the last 2 or 3 months, and that means that some people who would have been supported by us are no longer supported by us, and I'm sorry to say about that. But also we are doing transformation and continuing to do transformation, and the effects are helping us with our budget. And our plans for adult social care are not about cutting support, they're about helping people earlier in better ways so fewer people reach crisis point. For example, adults with complex need, we continue to help them given the right level of care. The changes we are making focus on prevention, things like reablement, technology that supports independence, and stronger community support. These approaches help people to stay well for longer while making the system more sustainable. Any savings come from doing things smarter, not from taking essential care away. So I just wanted to make that clear to people. We still have a problem with housing. We are overspending on housing, and that is partly because there are more people needing care, there are more people needing looking after from a housing point of view who are losing their tenancies, and we do try and intervene with people to stop that happening. But there are all sorts of reasons for that. In fact, somebody from the CAB said to me the other day, it's to do with the bedroom tax, that there are people in properties with 3 bedrooms where the housing association is not very keen on that, and if they get into terrible debt, they do force them to move out. And I'm pretty horrified to find out about that, actually, because they should be moving them to somewhere else rather than actually making them homeless, in my view. But what we are doing a bed and breakfast reduction scheme, but the scarcity of accommodation continues, and that is still a problem for us in Somerset, finding enough accommodation for people who are homeless.
So I think what you're seeing is a reduction in the budget, and I think that is part of the transformation, as you've described. It's what we're trying to do and what we've continued to do. I think with the continuing use of tech, not to replace care, but to augment care, you have a very different way of working with individuals. And that is absolutely, we're seeing a difference in that space. From a housing point of view, we know in the settlement, the government have recognised the fact that temporary accommodation is an area of concern and have yet again released yesterday some additional funding next year to help us in that space. And I think it is about how do we increase that, how do we get it better? And there is a programme of change to do that. And as part of the transformation, there is also a programme of change for housing around prevention, early intervention. All that will start feeding into how do we deliver our temporary accommodation and our move on for individuals in a better way going forward. So you start to see that coming through over the next year or so.
Thank you both. Moving on to children's, Heather.
Thank you so much. And thanks again for the 3 appendices and the details within. So we have appendices B, C and C1, CI. And they're really, and I think they do explain quite well what is happening in the 2 pressure areas that we have. So Appendix B takes us through the social care and education spend, the education services spend, and you can see there listed out where we are above our budget and where we're below. I think to say, as we say every time, we have got the Southwest in general has a higher proportion of children coming into care than other parts of the UK. We certainly have seen that. We're still below national averages, but it means those increases are hitting us now. Another 18 residential placements were needed, and that can make such a difference in the short term for children coming in. Obviously that's a net increase, so we are still working on getting children back out, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to come out of the work we're doing with Newton colleagues to make sure that we're doing all the right things around stepping down, stepping away, and fully understanding what we're paying for each placement. Children need good, loving, stable homes, and we are struggling on occasion to find that, whereas our foster care in numbers are stabilising because we are bringing new foster carers in but losing some for all kinds of reasons. Our kinship care is going up, so our places in those types of homes are increasing, but not at the rate that we need them for the increase at the front door. And so we need to make sure that we are doing the stepping down and making sure people are in the right place as much as possible. So that's on and I think also on Appendix B, what I'd say as well is there are a number of areas where it's described as a vacancy saving. And I find that quite a difficult phrase because it is technically, of course it is. We have a vacancy, therefore we're not spending money. But if we have a vacancy, it's because we cannot recruit, which means we're not necessarily delivering the service in that area. It's not like a saving which we had through restructure where we said certain posts we didn't need, they were taken out. That's a long-term saving. And I'm not having to go at finance because it's actually accurate, but we pay a price for some of those underspends because we're not getting the services in. So that's on the social care side. On the 2, on C and CI, which are around the DMP and the deficit which we have, obviously, you know, it's been rehearsed in this room many times. We had, you know, from the time the budget was set this time last year, or slightly earlier, we have had a 30% increase in applications around EHCPs, education healthcare plans. Some of that I think is directly attributable to the broadcast, if you like, or promoted or advertised white paper for SEND that still has not yet materialized, which we're hoping will come very soon. But we have to keep working, you know, in the meantime, we can't wait for it because we've been waiting for months. So that 30% increase was not anticipated. There was modelling for increase, but not for that level of increase. So we are where we are on those 2 things. So I think what I would take away from the government announcements, again, brilliantly described by Liz, clearly described by Liz, it's a useful thing, much as the extension to the override was a positive, helpful thing, but it's not the solution. It's a helpful thing for us. But what I think it has to focus our minds on, and we've all said this in the room again, is to make sure that when we're bringing business cases forward, that they are properly validated, that we do that quickly, that we get the recruitment in, and we have to move, using your phrase, Bill, at pace but not at haste. We have to move very quickly. It's a small window that this change has given us to work in. And I think we're all, we have to do it. It's mandated that we do it, but it's what we want to do anyway, to have that SEND improvement plan. and ensure that our DMP is checked out against it and that we do all the right things. So that would be my overview, I think, for the three appendices that we have here. I don't know if there was any more about that, but it's fitting with the direction. A lot of the stuff that we're hearing coming out, say on the social care side from the government, is the way we want to work anyway, and so that's working with our transformation. On the SEND side of things, we are still waiting to hear what the white paper will say, but we're not waiting and doing nothing. We just don't yet know what they're going to say.
Okay, nothing further to add, Claire? No. Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously there are areas of concern. I had there was a working theory, I think, that we were seeing a post-COVID spike in demand for care placements. Are we seeing these figures reflected in comparable authorities, or is this a pattern that's special to Somerset?
No, it's seen in other local authorities as well. It's seen across the country, this increase in numbers of children in the care system. And yes, I think we perhaps optimistically felt that it was a post-COVID spike in sort of 22, 23 as it started to go up, and it went up very slowly at that point. But it is much more sustained. And there are lots of potential reasons for that. I don't think anybody has yet come up with something that explains why this has gone up so much across the country. But if you just look at, what for Somerset and nationally, the anxiety that young people feel, the increasing mental health problems has been sustained beyond COVID. And that has a really significant impact, particularly on mid-teens and older teenagers, where parents are asking for their children to come into care because they feel that their child might die in their care because they're so worried about their mental health. They want somebody else to be able to look after them. We still have the issues in relation to serious youth violence, which other local authorities have as well, where again, parents are saying, I don't feel my child is safe at home, I can't keep them safe from this external issue in terms of serious youth violence outside the home, and are asking us to look after their child to try and keep them safe away from the family home while that issue is resolved. And there is an increase at the other end in families who are really struggling to care for their very small children. So an increase in parents who have drug and alcohol, mental health, domestic violence issues, which is impacting significantly on their ability to care for children. And I think we are seeing a small but significant increase in the neglect of younger children, which I think is to do with poverty. That's my personal view, that families are really struggling to be able to prioritise what children need in terms of food, consistent food of decent quality, clothing, suitable clothing for the weather, particularly when the parents also have their own issues where they are just really struggling to prioritise what needs to happen in their family environment. We are very lucky in that we do have the family safeguarding model. So we have drug and alcohol, mental health and domestic abuse workers in our safeguarding social work teams who support some of those families early. What I think we're seeing at the moment, and we're just doing a review of that family safeguarding model, is that it would be worse if we didn't have those teams, those people in those teams. They're working at quite an early level to try and prevent those issues escalating, and are doing well with that. But we are not able to prevent some of those more severe issues coming through. And I think the other aspect, which having talked to other DCSs across the country, is there are a significant number of children coming through that we don't know, that we've never heard of before, with very significant issues. And we're trying to track those back and work through those in terms of looking at audits and practice evaluations of those to work out how did that happen, how are we not aware of these children, how are we not informed. But that appears to be a national issue too that we really need to get on top of, so that we have the Families First programme that the government have put in place is supporting us to intervene earlier, to have better intelligence in much more local areas around families, so that we're picking up intelligence and supporting families at a really early stage, both in terms of chronology, but in terms of also in terms of when a problem starts, so that we are able over time to support those families and prevent those children needing statutory services. that's not a 5-minute fix, because we've got to pull together with our partners a sort of larger multi-agency teams in local areas, which requires all organisations to work differently in terms of geography and co-location and the roles of people in those organisations to be able to do that work much earlier.
Thank you. Heather, did you want to add a little bit?
If you don't mind, and I'm not going to woman-splain what Claire's just said. She said it all beautifully. But I think I just wanted to point out that Bill and I both were down at in Wellington yesterday at the Cradle to Career a launch of this initiative, which is the community initiative, and it's where you have a hub of fabulous cross-organisation collective working to improve the lot of children and families in that area. It's a wonderful thing to see, and lots of it, and we can see how the work that's already going on organically in that area is working fantastically. It'll be a really helpful thing for us on our Best Start for Life work that we are in a sense obliged to do by the government, but isn't it a wonderful thing? And we get a little bit of money to do it, but to get that first 1,000 days of a child's life, because of how much, if we can get into the child that early, it's an investor save. It makes life much easier. But the scary thing I just wanted to share, because this is happening in lots of places across the county, but the one I wanted to share was I had heard that 3.4 million of our children live in poverty in this country. What I hadn't heard was 1 million are in destitution. Now, I don't know how many is in our area, but we'll have a share. So I think that point about the poverty and the challenges for families is, I just wanted to say, because I hadn't heard that before, and it kind of made me more than wince. It's a horrible thought that in 2026 in the country, that's what we have. So I just wanted to share that one because it didn't get much airtime elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. And just to also mention the Homes and Horizons work as well. I'm really impressed to see that in the report and the impacts of that coming through as well. It shows the importance of that transformation project, and we look forward to further transformation projects coming forwards from Children's. Just looking at anybody want to comment on the place-based service financial report. Very happy if you don't, if you get what I mean on that. We've got an underspend in those services. And any other papers in the appendices that anyone wants to highlight anything? Just for awareness, Councillor Theobald Phillips had to go for childcare emergency reasons. So please can we record his apologies for the rest of the meeting? No, so I'll go to other councillors. Councillor Lee Redmond, please.
Chair, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. A couple of quick points. I'm just really interested. I'm trying to unpack in my head some of the comments that Claire made a moment ago in relation to some of the troubles in some of the rationale and reasons why children are looking to come into care. I just maybe want to make a suggestion for you, if you would consider it, perhaps to pass to ask Children and Family Scrutiny to have a look at reasons why our care numbers are increasing, and maybe help add a little bit of depth to that, because there were a number of comments that was made there by the Director of Children's Services, which I think scrutiny could perhaps help you and dig down into and see whether we can find a way forward in that. So that's my first point. To go to the reason for putting my hand up. Obviously, this week has been eventful one way or another, and like you, I was both pleased and shocked to see the short announcement on Monday in relation to the funding issue, but particularly around the send part there. And I thank Mr. Heapy for his comments. Him and the Director of Children's Services both received an email from me within 30 seconds, I think, of the publication, seeking clarification, because, as is always the case, and as has been pointed out, the devil will be in the detail in what's coming out for these statements. And I welcome the additional information that Mr. Heapy added to that point. I was going to ask a question specifically that Councillor Rigby beat me to the run for that one, about how the money would potentially benefit the council in that, but we can dig deeper into that. But the reason for coming in is to ask a question, really. On Thursday, we've got Children and Family Scrutiny, and the Deficit Management Plan governance is going to be coming there. So could I ask if Mr. Heapy could put some of what he said in today's meeting into a sort of a briefing note that we could look at on Thursday, so that we can cover that, the changes that are happening, so that we can understand that a little bit better. The note will be able to help us dig down and understand where we are, because as rightly so, the executive member has pointed out, the deficit management plan is still as important now as it was before this announcement. And I think we would benefit from being able to add to the level of scrutiny there. Just one final point before I'll shut up and move on. It was made reference about the potential white paper announcement, and it is frustrating for me, as it is you, to see that we're being run up the hill or halfway up the hill and then back down again for it coming along. And I was listening, I think it was to Radio 4 this morning, where the Minister for Send was actually there talking at previewing what I think may have been included in some of there, talking about pods and the way that we might use them within secondary schools. It's a bit confusing, really, because little announcements are coming out without any clarity or detail by it. And I think that's a problem that we have, because, again, it adds to the complex, confusing nature of everything that's going on. We're being given indications that it's coming, but without it, Somerset is being impacted. So I, like you, I would call for, I would hope that the white paper, it seems to be getting imminent, ever that much closer, but the sooner we get it, the sooner we can start acting things and reacting to it and putting things in place to better serve our children.
Thank you, Councillor Redmond. I think there was a "do you not agree" at the end of that one, to make it a question. So the scrutiny point, yes, please. That would be amazing if you could do that piece of work. No problem. Mr. Heafy's was nodding away when you asked for his briefing, so that's really good news. I'm hearing the Send white paper by the end of the month is the last briefing, which is put a smile on your face, but I'm not sure whether that is a wry smile or a happy smile. But I'm sure your connections to the government may be better than mine in terms of moving that one forward. So I don't know. I know you're such an influential figure in the Association of Labour Councillors, and I didn't listen to Radio 4 and pods this morning, but I would point you in the direction of the Send units that we're investing in mainstream schools at the moment, because if we can get the right provision into our mainstream schools, that's ultimately where we want it. If that's the right place for our children to be. I think that covers all the points that you raised. Yeah, you could give me a thumbs up. I've managed to answer all the questions. That's unusual for a politician, isn't it? Thanks very much, Lee. I've got Bob Filmer next, please.
Thank you, Leader. A couple of questions, if I could. First one was you mentioned the Homes and Horizons. I was just wondering whether we're looking at further rolling out beyond our plans for Homes and Horizons to take that scheme beyond where we originally went for. Also, on page 53, para 49, talked about debtor management. Just wonder whether we could be clear on that, because it refers to total debt standing at 26 million. I would assume that's total debt of debtors payment, because otherwise it can get people confused between total debt for the council. I just wonder whether we need to just be a bit clear on that para as to what that refers to. And the final one was page 98, right at the bottom of the page, last paragraph, highways, talking about higher than expected cost for gritting operation salt usage. This winter we have had some cold weather, but it hasn't been the worst that we've ever known. I just wonder whether we had adequate provision for a hard winter. It may well be that we're taking into account there the floods and storms that have come in as well, but it just worried me on that. And there's a further comment about gully clearance. Again, just looking for a reassurance that our savings on maintenance of gullies aren't coming back to bite us through emergency gully work.
Thank you, Bob, for those questions on the Homes and Horizons. Claire's reaching for the microphone first. Thank you.
Yep. So we the contract we have, or the strategic partnership, is for up to 10 homes. We have applied and been given additional grant by the Department of Education of another, I think it's 1.5 million, so we can extend that through the procurement rules for 10% up, so we can extend that to 11, which is what we intend to do. We are currently in the process of just starting to do the refurbishment of Home 9. We've identified Home 10, and we're just considering where Home 11 should be and the type of children that Home 11 would best suit. So yes, we have extended that slightly.
Okay, thank you very much. Your second question, I didn't write the word a word down, but I think it was something towards debt, wasn't it? Is Mr. Heafy best place to run us that?
I think the reference is to Appendix K in the budget report, which is the sundry debtor position. So it's non-council tax, non-LNDR debt. So this is debts in the course of normal trade. What we've seen there is debts now are standing at about 26.5 million, which is down from 32.4 million in September. So there's a lot of effort going into collecting debt and making sure that all the cash that's due to us is being collected. So I'm very happy with that trend. Still a long way to go, but councils like ours will always have large sundry debtor books, and we do provide for it in the normal course of events. So we'll be expecting to collect current debts at 100%, all the way through to very old debts that where actually we'll assume very little collection and make a provision against it. But nonetheless, we will continue to progress and chase all debts until they become unrecoverable.
Okay, and gully clearance, which Richard looks like he's going to speak.
Yeah, I'll just mention the gritting first of all to say, clearly we've had an issue with cold weather followed by wet weather very quickly. So the gritting we do has been washed off very quickly, and that's really has added to the impact of our of this winter in particular. And of course, that's also had an impact on the state of the roads, because you get that freezing, which has really decimated our road surfaces, as you're seeing at the moment. And like I say, we're doing our best to remedy that. But and you'll also understand that whilst patching these holes, it's much better that we do a full programme of preventative measures, and that's what I've very much been trying to do. But in this scenario, we do have to do work proactively. On gully work, I have to say that for many years we've probably not done as much gully work as we'd like to. I don't think that we've really made any savings in this area, but I'll hand over to Chris if he's got any sort of direct figures to go with that.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, so nothing to hand on gully emptying, but I would draw your attention to the Community Place and Economy finance appendix, where it does reference costs of gritting, specifically around gritting hire. So we've had to hire in machinery whilst we undertake a procurement exercise, and that's cost us about £218,000 more than we initially anticipated. So there are pressures within the system, not solely on gritting delivery, but actually in the infrastructure that supports the delivery of it. So that's where the pressure exists, is in the machinery hire.
Okay, and I'm tempted to ask whether we name those temporary gritting resources, because I know that's one of our favourite times of year. Richard,
just to come in back on that, one of the things that I have brought in is an attempt to get our gritters up to a decent standard. We did not have a rolling programme to replace our gritters, and I have brought that in, but it takes time, and I'm sure you're very keen to name the next lot of gritters that come this way next year.
Okay, thanks ever so much. And can I move on to now the recommendations? That we note the forecasting overspend position of 6.367 million and total underspend of 0.099 million for 25-26, to agree the mitigating actions are to be identified and implemented with relevant executive and service director in order to reduce any overspends to take account and to contribute to the long-term financial sustainability of the authority, to note the in-year forecast overspend on the DSG of 45.783 million against the current budgeted funding of 163.964 million, and the total forecast year-end deficit of 107.775 million. To agree a transfer to the DSG deficit reserve of 8 million from the non-service underspend for 25-26. Note the collection rates for council tax and business rates. Note the quarterly update on prudential indicators. To note the outstanding debt position, and to note the general reserves is 63.2 million, and to note the capital forecast outturn of 25-26 is 170.556 million, and to approve the capital budget of 13.69 million as set out in the papers. Can I see a proposer, Councillor Leishon? Can I see a seconder?
Chair.
Oh, sorry. Well, I have actually moved on, and I didn't have you indicating.
Sorry, Chair. Normally you say any more questions. I was waiting for you to ask the question.
Okay, my apologies if we haven't actually voted yet. If it's a small one that we can help
It's
with.
free, just free for clarification.
Yeah, I'm just very aware that we're right. I'm trying to keep the meeting to time, and I know colleagues have other things to attend to. So very briefly, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the three questions I've got for clarification, probably from the officers. The first one is just around the Appendix C on the deficit management plan, where it talks about, and I think Councillor Shearer explained this previously, but it's not in this report, so I may have got it be mistaken. It just talks about the recruitment of the various posts, and it says at Q3, the role of head of service is not yet recruited to. And we know one of the recommendations from people too was about that particular head of service post. So I wanted to know, is there someone now in post for that? And if so, when? And the other thing on children's is with the children's forecasting an overspend of 11.5, we've been also told that the DMP actions are not progressing as fast as perhaps we would have originally liked it to be. I'm wondering, is us not delivering the DMP actions at the pace that was required, putting pressure on the current overspend in year as well? That's the first one, Chair.
So in relation to the head of SEND, because it's a new role, we had to create new job descriptions and it had to go through a job evaluation panel and various internal processes, which has taken slightly longer than we expected. That has now been completed, and we're looking to put that job out to advert very shortly. We're just talking through the recruitment process. That will mean that somebody hopefully will be enrolled within 3 to 4 months to get that sorted. In relation to the overspend in children's services, the 11.5, the DMP doesn't really impact on that because the DMP is looking to reduce the pressure on the high needs overspend. The work in that is largely to try and bring children into mainstream school to support them well so that they're in their local school with their peers, but getting the additional support that they need. The overspend in children's services is largely to do with children in residential care who are in the care system, and those two things don't really interact.
Thank you, Chair. And my other question, which I'll put it into one, is really around the Appendix J, the MTFP savings paper. There are a number of savings which are identified as at risk or undeliverable, one of the two. And some of them are rolled forward from 24-25 as well. And I'm just wondering what's happening with those particular ones. Are they going to be rolled forward into the next year as well? And what impact that has on the budget for next year? Or are we going to bin those kind of 24-25 ones? And one specific one on those savings is just the delivery of home to school travel, which had a targeted saving of £500,000. Part of the children's overspend document, there's a forecast overspend on children's travel of 1.656 million. So again, I'm wondering, had that 500k saving been delivered, would that have had an impact on the overspend within transport that we're seeing at the moment within the service?
What you'll see when it comes to the medium-term financial plan at the next meeting is that we've done an assessment of the likelihood of delivery of savings, where they're going to be unachievable for a reason. So we had discussions before around waste recycling centres and possibilities around that. It's become clear for contractual reasons that that saving can't be carried out. There is no point in carrying that forward anymore. It's a false economy, so we'll take that one out. There are other ones where we think actually it's not really about whether the saving can be delivered, it's a timing issue about when, and they will be brought forward. So you'll see more detail on that in the MTFP in a couple of weeks' time. In terms of the particular one around home to school transport, I defer over to the director on that particular one.
I'll make a start on that one. I think, yes, if I may, and I know the work is being done on really as working out which savings that have gone into MTFP are actually achievable or not. What I would say, and I think I just need, it's probably my fault for not working through the narrative properly. I want to make sure that narrative is there. I know that through this homeschool transport work, both on home to school and send, a good deal of process improvement has gone on to the point where we've become kind of almost nationally recognised as doing things well. We're not perfect by any means, but we've done it. So some savings have been made, but demand has increased. So you end up looking like you've done nothing because you've still got an overspend. And I think what I need to take away with my colleagues, and I know Phil's in the room, but he's here for a different reason. What I'd like to be doing is bringing almost a briefing for people so they can understand it, because homeschool transport is really important for the children who benefit from it. It's really complex, but we've brought some quite tough savings in there and some good savings in there, and yet we are still over. And partly, I mentioned earlier, we had this 30% increase in EHC children having education healthcare plans, and that goes straight onto our kind of demand around send transport. So I think it's more complex than it looks at when you just see kind of the net figures or the end figures. And I'd really like to share that as a proper narrative. And I think that would help everybody understand it. And the work is there and the complexity is there. We understand it, but we've already got 3 appendices and quite a lot of pages. So we could probably do with more detail for that.
Okay, we'll draw a line there because we are actually over time on this agenda item. I had gone through the proposer and was looking for a seconder, Councillor Wilkins. Can I see those in favour of that report? Those against? That is clearly carried. We move on to agenda item 8, which is the 25-26 HRA Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring Report, quarter 3, end of December 25. Councillor Frederica Smith-Roberts to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. So a positive position in relation to the HRA. Just as a reminder to everyone, this is separate to the general fund. It's looking after our council properties that are made up of a mixture between properties that are looked after by the ALMO, which is Homes in Somerset, and the in-house service, particularly around the north and the west of the county, that we have started branching out into other areas such as Charlton Adam with different aspects of our capital programme. So as we look at what quarter 3 is forecasting, we're coming in with an underspend of 0.980 million. That's a positive from our perspective, and that's made up of a different small different elements, whether that's the fact that we've done an over recovery of some income, or also an underspend when we've got some staff vacancies across the HRA structure. There are still pressures within the HRA, particularly around our repairs and maintenance, particularly around our voids, as an example, some of them being void for longer, and also the impact of when we do keep houses as voids as we move through regeneration, the fact that we do pay council tax and other elements on them. So that does have an impact on the HRA. I've got Kerry with me here today to answer any technical questions, and you can see within the paper and within our opening within section 5 and 6 around the capital programme and just how that is progressing. We've made a stance as an executive or as a council that we want to not just build homes, but that we want to ensure that people live in good quality homes. So capital doesn't just cover those purchasing of homes or building of new homes, but actually taking care of our properties and meeting regulatory requirements. But any questions, please do ask.
Harry, would you like to add anything?
Thank you. So hello, my name is Kerry Prisco. I'm the Strategic Finance Business Partner for the Housing Revenue Account. Just to give you some more headlines in regards to the quarter 3 report. So as Frederick Councillor what we're saying, we've got a net underspend of 0.98 million. So this has moved since quarter 2. That it's a positive movement in that we've underspent further. That's about 694k. The main reasons for this movement is a kind of combination of 2 elements really. The first being what the capital programme is projecting in quarter 3, and there is further some more slippage being reported. So that means that our capital financing has reduced, which in turn means that we need to borrow less as a consequence of some of those schemes. So that is a good news in terms of revenue position and less cost of borrowing being put forward. Some of that's been offset, and that's mainly looking at our repairs and maintenance area. So general repairs and maintenance is responsive repairs, and the updated forecast is that that's kind of increased slightly since quarter 2, and also kind of responsive repairs on our void properties. Again, that has increased slightly due to some unplanned clearance and safety works development sites, and also some temporary accommodation decants coming through the works. So there has been a bit of movement in that respect. General reserves is still kind of maintaining its kind of current position. So at the moment it's 17.8 million. It is going to reduce slightly for expected spend to finance some extra dwelling acquisitions of 1.1 million. And then increasing that by putting in the underspend that we're projecting from quarter 3 into that. So it will stay at around 17.688 million. In terms of the capital programme, just a reminder that the total approved capital programme is to be spent over the next 5 years. That's 268 million. We plan to spend 79 in this financial year only. So in comparison to what we plan to spend, the current forecast outturn is 51 million. That is an underspend of about 25 million. Of that, about 22.6 is now being proposed to be carried forward, and that's what I was referring to earlier around what's been slipped on the capital programme, which is impacting our forecast in terms of interest payments and borrowing. This mainly relates to kind of delays, development programmes, some works on sewage treatment plants, replacements, and some other major works such as kitchens and heating improvements. We're also forecasting to return some budget, about 2.6 million. And this relates to some late changes on the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund compared to when we set the budget. Originally, it's about 1.2 million there. Some changes in IFRS 16 in terms of how we deal with the transactions around our vehicle lease costs, etc. And then also some further kind of surplus budgets on some other major works programmes that still got budget in the programme for future financial years, but there's a bit of a building up surplus that they're kind of proposing to return and just kind of tidy up really. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kerry. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. But this all seems to be pretty good news to me. I'm very pleased with the void reduction program that is going through. Very pleased to see that. One thing I picked up, and I kind of probably should have asked it at the time, but in the forward plan, we've got quite a lot of house purchases by the HRA coming through. I know this is quarter 3, so it may be in next year's budget. I just wondered where that fits in the budgeting, because there'll be quite a lot of expenditure, presumably. And I'd quite like you to explain about the programme for buying presumably already completed houses, which I'm delighted about because we need them desperately. But I just wanted you to explain so that we can understand it. Thank you.
So, Chair, if I may, so the capital programme was set out the development schemes or the acquisitions that we're making. So there's a specific capital programme that was approved with the budget last year, and that will be refreshed for this year's budget setting process. And that identifies the individual schemes, whether they are through acquisition or regen. So it will quite literally name them and the locations of them. For our regen schemes, that is property or stock or land that we already own that we are then converting, so garage sites, North Taunton, Willowways, Oxford Inn, etc. For acquisitions, we tend to go via the Section 106 agreement route because that is development schemes where the developer is required to deliver social housing or affordable housing, and then we purchase them at a discounted rate. So that's the mechanism that we tend to use. We're seeing some challenges. So the money that was approved, the additional 3.37 million that was approved, we're seeing some challenges there in that developers have predominantly sold a lot of that Section 106 stock already. So we're now looking to some open market purchases where we can get the right value and we can meet those temporary accommodation needs as part of that process. So Kerry has referenced some slippage in the capital programme here. So what we're seeing is that some of those developments aren't coming through in the same year that we expected. Some of that will be weather dependent, some of it will be legal contract. There could be a range of reasons. Penley House has been delayed slightly because there was a break-in at site and a load of materials were stolen. So whilst that isn't a direct cost to us, that does impact on the delivery of that scheme and the exact timetabling of it. Hope that helps.
I'm sorry to be ignorant. I'm asking a really stupid question here, but when it comes to Section 106, do we compete with the RPs then to get them? Is that how it works?
Yeah, effectively, yeah. The developers will make those houses available, and it will be for RPs and all the council to consider whether they purchase those. So yeah, we're all operating in that same environment.
Questions from executive? Any other members? Councillor Healy. Hello.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the update so far. Could I spot the homes in Somerset have made provision for the energy certificate, performance certificates? As we know, it comes into law in 2030, where all rented accommodation homes and ordinary homes have to have a minimum of a C rating. Could the whoever it is enlighten me? Has the provisions been made? How much has been put aside? Because there is scares in the private housing sector to say it could cost between £15,000 and £30,000 for each property to be bought up to C rating. So could you inform me, please?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I'm just checking with Kerry, but the HRA has made provision rather than Homes in Somerset because it's a HRA funded activity. So regardless of whether it's in-house stock or Homes in Sedgemoor managed stock, the HRA has made provision. Yes.
I might just correct you that it's Homes in Somerset, not Homes in Sedgemoor.
One day I'll get it right.
Sorry, Chairman, to
Yeah.
come back if I may. Any idea of how much, please?
Kerry, if you have it to hand, if not, we'll get you a written response. Written response, I'm being nodded. Thank you.
Thank you. Written response on, yeah, sorry, that's beyond the encyclopedic knowledge of staff that are present. So Duncan advises me that Diogo waved and I missed you again. I don't know what it is today, Diogo. Maybe
I don't take it personally.
No, maybe you should dress more ostentatiously or something. I don't know.
Thank you. Just the one question, and it's really something to take away, is, and I accidentally closed the tab on my screen, so now I'm going to have to try and remember what I was thinking. The £22 million slippage, that rough figure there, we've heard some of the reasons for it, and I've tried to look as much as I can in the report for all the detail, particularly the major development slippage, 14 million, which is good to understand. But where is the detail behind it? I know some has been given by the officer, which is great. But as members, in order for us to scrutinise, and it's probably something maybe for scrutiny more than us here sat before you, is actually digging into that detail a bit more and seeing are there any. I'm interested to know, are there any patterns, in recurring patterns, of different projects or in previous years to this year? Just really digging into the detail a bit further. If something's able to be provided to us in the future, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, by all means, we can get a written response to that, but we did also do a development presentation to scrutiny. I'm forgetting now, probably 6 months ago, but we have been bringing it by a scrutiny, but by all means, we can get you an update on those. It'll be across a range of different schemes, but we'll get a response.
Okay, anyone else? Nope, everyone had the opportunity that time. So our recommendations are to note the HRA forecast underspend of 0.98 million. That was a close one. For 25-26 and the impact of the HRA general reserve of this underspend, and note the forecast outturn position of the capital programme of 54.142 million for 25-26. Proposer Councillor Frederica Smith-Roberts, seconded by Councillor Wakefield. All those in favour, all those against. We are bang on time for our comfort break at 11:45. Please can we reassemble at 12 noon? Thank you very much. Right, good afternoon. And we're on to agenda item 9, housing revenue account, rent setting and fees and charges for 26-27, the revenue budget for 26-27, the capital budget for 26-27, right up to 2030-31, the MTFP update and 30-year business plan update, and that's pages 179 to 306. There will be a quiz on this. Federica.
Thank you, Chair. So I did give my brief overview of what the HRA is, so I won't cover that again. But what I will say is that this is a budget that we're bringing forward that's built on responsibility, long-term planning and our ongoing commitment to provide safe, secure and sustainable homes for our tenants. The report sets out the essential decisions that we need to take today to maintain financial stability across the HRA, and that does cover things such as rent setting, those fees and charges, and a substantial capital programme that looks ahead into 2030-31. These proposals ensure that we can continue to deliver a balanced budget while protecting the services and the improvements our tenants rely on. We are proposing an increase to the dwelling rents for 26-27. That's in line with the government's rent standard. And we've got that also those increases happening across our sheltered and extra care housing. We do have some shared ownership properties, and we have some affordable rent tenures. These changes are carefully considered and essential to maintain the financial foundations of our HRA while ensuring that we are fair and consistent. Alongside this, we've got some modest adjustments to fees and charges. Those do get reviewed every year, and there are some small increases there, particularly to garage rents and community facilities, that just help us ensure that we can maintain those rising costs and then give still quality of service. We've got that major capital programme that supports both our improvement of existing homes and the development or purchase of new ones. We also look to make sure that we maintain and look to have obligations around our energy efficiency of our homes, looking at decarbonisation and that long-term maintenance that our homes needs. We want our tenants to live in warm, modern where they can do, and affordable homes across not just that north and west as it was, but across Somerset. Turning to the long-term view, which is what we need to do every year, we give you a 30-year HRA business plan. That provides a strong framework that keeps the HRA sustainable across the decades ahead. There are pressures in there, particularly around the major investment programme, and we've got some challenging economic environments, but also we ensure that we have resilience through it, and Kerry will be able to go into more detail and answer any questions about that 30-year plan.
Thank you very much, Fred, and Kerry again.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Smith-Roberts. Okay, so yes, so this report presents to you the housing revenue account budget setting report. So within this, we do have rent setting and fees and charges for 26-27, the updated revenue budget for 26-27, a capital budget from 26-27 through to 2030-31, an MTFP update and a 30-year business plan update. To support the report, we do have appendices through from A to K. So to go through the report with you, from a rent setting point of view for 26-27, we are proposing an increase of 4.8%, which is CPI plus 1%, as per the government's 10-year rent settlement that starts from this April 26. Please note that full council have approved for yourselves as the executive to approve our rents and fees and charges for the HRA for 26-27. That's part of the recommendations today, please. In terms of rent convergence, I'll give you an update. So on the 28th of January, whilst we were in scrutiny at the time, they did announce the introduction of rent convergence. However, this will commence from April 2027. And this will allow landlords to increase rents by £1 per week over and above CPI plus 1%. And then from April 28, this will increase to an increase of £2 per week over and above CPI plus 1%. And that will be until rents meet formula rents. So what that means is that if there is a tenant that is currently below the formula rent, we will be allowed to increase by CPI plus 1% plus up to £1 or up to £2 from the year after until they reach that ceiling. If I may draw your attention to recommendation E, and just note that I would like to request a slight change. It currently says that we'd like to adopt this from April 2026. Because of the announcement from government, we'd like to kindly change that, if permitted, to April 2027, please. Otherwise, the rest of the recommendation stands at present. Just to note as well that the financial position within the report is not impacted by this change because we did not include any information in terms of financial projections around rent convergence. We wanted to leave that out and wait until we were actually provided the final announcement. Just to also note that we have a rent setting policy at Appendix A and a supporting equality impact assessment at Appendix B, and Appendix C is an equality impact assessment just for the rents and the fees and charges for 26-27. In terms of fees and charges for 26-27, there are a number of charges that we are permitted to recharge our costs incurred to our tenants and or leaseholders as applicable. These are summarised in Appendix D for those being levied by homes in Somerset, and Appendix E for those being levied by the in-house service. In terms of the main changes, we do have Lifeline equipment, where both operations will include GSM systems and SIM cards as part of their new digital systems and sheltered housing, and that cost has been now included. Communal areas within the in-house service to now include legal compliance activity to ensure our communal spaces are kept clear of personal items and any hazards. And then the cleaning charge levied by the General Fund Clean Surrounds for works done on communal spaces in the north have increased, and this has been passported through to the tenants. And there are some other changes with regards to Legionella, TV aerials and lifts that the costs have changed. To also note, there's a service charge policy at Appendix F and a quality impact assessment for that policy at Appendix G. In terms of the annual revenue budget for 26-27, this is summarised in Appendix H. So we are able to produce a balanced budget next year. In fact, we can actually make a surplus of 1.35 million, and we're proposing to transfer this to general reserves. Just to note that we do need to make a surplus year on year to make sure that our 30-year business plan is remains sustainably viable. So, for example, we need to be able to repay our debts or some of our debts, as we can't keep on borrowing more each year on year, because otherwise the HRA cannot afford to actually finance that borrowing through interest payments. In terms of the main changes to the revenue budget next financial year, as mentioned, there's going to be increases around dwelling rent income and fees and charges. There will be general inflation on expenditure throughout the both operations. There'll be estimates around staff pay awards and such like. Inflation on the management fee paid to homes in Somerset, insurance premiums, changes in dwelling depreciations, and our interest payments. Just to note around interest payments, we did assume 4.2% for any new borrowing or refinancing in 25-26 because of the PWLB discount that is in place. It was due to end March 26, and we didn't know that they were going to extend it. So I can now be pleased to announce that they have now told us that they will be extended that, but the current projections still assume that we weren't going to get that, and that was 5% thereafter. So that would be good news for one financial year, and we will consider that during budget monitoring during next financial year and during the next budget refresh again. In terms of the capital programme, we have a 5-year programme, and this is summarised in Appendix I. If I can then just highlight the fact that this does focus on maintaining the Decent Home Standard and any other compliant regulations as required. It continues to do a component replacement cycle. It also includes achieving EPC C by 2030, provides AIS adaptations and disabled facility grants, decarbonisation works via Eco4 and the Warmer Homes Social Housing Fund with 50% funding to 2930, and also a social housing development programme with a net growth of 489 homes across Somerset, and that's a combination of design and build as well as acquisitions, and those individual schemes are summarised in Appendix J. In terms of our general reserves position, we have around 17 million at the moment. Full council have already approved to use 3.3 million of that for house purchases. So if we add the predicted surplus of 1.3 million and the underspend of 25-26, which we assumed at the time was based on Q2 projections, is going to be around 16 million. And we're also proposing to refresh our minimum balance. We like to do that every year just to make sure that we are being prudent for any unforeseeable kind of financial situations in the future. So we're currently being quite prudent at an equivalent of 10% of gross income budget for 26-27, and that's about £650 per property. Then got a section on our medium-term financial plan from paragraph 119. In terms of the financial health, that's been a new kind of section included this financial year. So to give you an overview, really, so overall the HRA remains financially stable, sustainable, despite short-term challenges, with its long-term outlook strengthening under the baseline assumptions in the model. For example, just to note that financial year 2027-28 is our most challenging year, and work has already commenced to analyse mobilisation costs and efficiency savings from the one operating model to see how that could benefit that financial year in the future. The report also looks at key metrics such as interest cover and ensuring that this is a minimum of 100%, but increasing to a more preferred provision of 125% after the 5-year capital programme. So once we do deliver our 5-year programme, things do start to improve. The report also provides an update on the 30-year business plan and also provides further information in Appendix K. If I can just apologise again that Appendix K was inadvertently omitted from the agenda papers for scrutiny. It was uploaded during the meeting though, and members were invited to send any comments or feedback to myself directly, which as far as I'm aware, I haven't had any, but just to apologise for that again. So in terms of the 30-year business plan, the baseline position maintains that minimum balance of general reserves at 10% gross income, which is prudent. Interest cover is maintained at minimum levels of 100% in the first 5 years and then improves. Since we also undertake sensitivity testing every financial year, just kind of stress test the model to see what's the model going to kind of react to the most, what we need to closely monitor going forwards. So we test it for general inflation, building costs and interest rates, and also kind of changes in voice. So building costs is the one where we need to watch closely, because if building costs increase only, that is going to put financial pressure on the model. We also look at doing some scenario testing as well, kind of what if, can we do this, what can we do that? So we looked at adding further decarbonisation works after the 5-year programme, also extending the development programme, but also reducing operating costs by 10%. So the scenario that was really unaffordable at present, based on the current assumptions, is the further decarbonisation work thereafter. Just to note that if you do look in Appendix K, there are some really useful charts that kind of provide a really good visualisation of the financial position of the HRA, not only its baseline position, but also how that baseline reacts to the sensitivity testing and the scenarios. In terms of risks, the risks we're kind of seeing are around accelerating the capital programme and being able to meet our interest cover. That's something that we really need to kind of monitor closely. Regulatory changes always impact us because normally it comes with an increase in costs required to deliver what those changes are. As I mentioned, a rise purely in building costs and any negative changes in the economic operating environment. So if inflation increases or interest rates go back up again. And also increases in demand. So we're very responsive with regards to repairs and voids and tenancy support throughout our HRA. Just to note, there are a number of topics discussed in our scrutiny committee meeting, and these are summarised in paragraph 191. happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Kerry, and what a tour de force that was. Thank you so much for the report, and with the duly noted change to the recommendation there. Are there any questions, Sarah?
Yes, thank you very much. It is long and it is complicated, and I'm trying to get my head around it. What I wanted to say first of all was just to reassure people that when the temporary accommodation is leased out or let out, then we pay that from our budget in adults and housing, obviously like anybody would. So just so that the public are aware that that's how it works, that we pay for that, pay the rent for it. I wanted to ask two things, well, three things. The first one was, do you think we will be able to meet the EPC requirements by the date that they come in for our properties? I know we've got quite a lot of new ones which should already meet it, of course. The second is, you talk about selling properties, and you think it might go down in the future because the government made it less easy to buy, and you have to have a longer qualification and all the rest of it. But with the 1-for-1 target, are we going to be able to meet that? And is that why we're buying quite a few extra houses in order to do that? Because we're expecting a few sales over this current year and the next year. And my third one is really to ask Kerry a bit more about rent convergence, because it's a new one on me. I don't really understand any of the terminology that you used when you were describing it. I don't know what people are paying now. She says formula rent. I don't know what that is. I just don't really understand why there's a divergence and how that's arisen. And I think it might be helpful for people to understand that, particularly me. Thank you.
I was going to ask if Chris can answer number one, please, around the can we meet the EPC requirement, and then I'll go on to the next. So, in terms of selling properties, within the business plan, we are projecting about right to buy sales, for example. So there has been a bit of a temporary influx due to the reaction to the government change in the right to buy scheme. So because that is a complete flux, what our unusual pattern is, we don't know what those sales might be going forward. So we have brought it down to kind of baseline position, which is 90 within this, which relates to the self-financing model, just as our current estimates at the moment. But we will be refreshing that, as we always do every single year, as part of our annual budget setting cycle and refreshing the business plan. So we will look to that. In terms of how does that impact us meeting our 1-for-1 spend requirements? So we as a council are spending in advance of our 1-for-1s spend requirements. We are above target on that, and we're doing really well on that. In terms of rent convergence, so at the moment, what we've been doing for the last couple of years is the government has said that we're allowed to increase our rents by CPI plus 1%, and they've said we can do that now for another 10 years. From April 2026. That doesn't mean they won't change their minds. So a few years ago, and I believe it was 23, 24, whilst we were in the midst of you can increase by CPI plus 1%, because inflation reached 10, 11%, the government said, actually, no, we're going to cap rents at 7%. So what that means is where the formula rent calculation is allowed to increase by CPI plus 1%, so that's went up by the 11.1%, I believe it was. We had to cap actual rents at 7%. So straight away that created this gap. And that is why we do not have many tenants that are actually on the formula rent. And that's the same not only for ourselves, but other organisations across England. So what they're saying is that we can now increase our rents for actual tenants by CPI plus 1%, but an extra £1 or up to £1 in year on year, or £2 from the year after, until we reach that formula rent level, the same level.
Formula rent being what we charge new tenants, or what is formula rent?
Yes, so formula rent is the maximum that we are allowed to charge tenants when we relet our properties, and that's part of the rent standards, a calculation that we have to apply, and that's the maximum. And what we've adopted, this council's adopted, is that we will relet out formula rent plus rent flex. So it's enabling the council and other housing providers to increase their income at a steady rate as per the government's terms and conditions until our tenants reach that formula rent themselves.
The idea that they all eventually pay the formula rent. Yeah, and so if there was a tenant who was in difficulties with that extra, we would try and help them presumably, or let them pay more slowly, or whatever you have to do.
Yes, you're quite right. So every tenant is individually assessed, and they go through a process when they are provided a home to live in. We do have what's called a hardship fund available for officers to request to draw upon. The budget for that next financial year in 26/27 is £25,000.
There was an outstanding question on EPCs, Chair, if I may.
Oh, well spotted.
Thank you. So, and we've not identified any particular risks around the delivery of EPC within the deadline. And as you heard earlier to a question, we've made financial provision for the delivery of it.
Thank you. And I just want to make the point, because many of us sit around and talk about the need for more social rent housing in this country. Across many countries, I think, probably. But we are pushing build and acquisition as far as we are able to due to borrowing costs, that we must have at least 100% interest cover as referenced in these papers. And I found it very interesting when you had the official opening for the housing at Seaward Way in Minehead. There was a really good piece in The Guardian that I referenced at scrutiny meeting, when the leader of Southwark Council explained why that council, although it had its own land and planning permission granted, could not build out more social housing because of the costs of borrowing, and that they were right up to their maximum. So I just think we need to make it clear that we are going as far as we possibly can. And even that 100% interest cover is only okay in the short term, that it should be 125%. So I just wanted to make it clear, Chair, that we are going as far as we possibly can, although we would love to be able to build more.
Bill, I'd just like to come in on that, because thanks to Liz for highlighting that. We did have the Guardian journalist come down, and Chris gave a really good explanation of those kind of challenges that we faced. It's not for want of ambition. As Chris and Kerry will know, I'm regularly saying, can we please build more homes? Can we please add more development in, so that we can help support Somerset residents and the many, is it 12,000 that we've now got on our Home Finder list. However, until this government, in my words, stops tinkering at the edges with regards to housing, but looks at either letting us borrow for a less rate or wiping off the debt that we took on, or those two HRAs took on in the past, that would be something significant that we could do. So if they are really committed to wanting to build more social housing, that's what they need to look at, in my opinion.
I just would like to understand, if possible, whether the current government thinking over this that you've very much explained, Federica, is still a hangover from the sell-off of council housing. It could be a long, drawn-out answer, but just something short would be helpful, I think, for my thinking.
Shall I pass to Chris, who gave a really good explanation in relation to how we took on the debt and why that impacts us, to the Guardian journalist, which led to, I think, partly those discussions with the other London council.
Yeah, so there's quite a lengthy history here, and I don't think this is necessarily the committee or the report space to give that answer. But I don't think the government's current approach is to do with large-scale voluntary stock transfer specifically. So I don't think those are related.
Okay, thank you for the brief answer on that one. Not seeing any other league members or executive league members. Any other league members? Diogo.
Thank you, Chair. Just 3 questions from me. One of the things the LGA peer review looked at and commented on and made recommendations on was the HRA business plan. We know that the LGA came in end of last year to kind of look at progress, or whatever the right wording is. And I suspect they would have obviously looked at the HRA business plan and whether that was in line with the recommendations that they made. So I'm just wondering, do we have any update from them about what their views were? And is that able to be presented before full council so that we can have a view on that from them? The second one, I'll give you all three because they're not too long, is around the mobilisation of the single operating model. Is it expected that that will deliver savings that are not currently in the report? And if so, when will we perhaps begin to understand the sorts of savings that will be brought into the HRA? And the third one, which is probably directly for Clive, is obviously there's the increase in borrowing costs around interest payable, and you've got the HRA debt set to reach 300 million in 2030-31 in the report. And it also says there's no headroom for any additional borrowing or increase in borrowing in that kind of period too. I want to understand, and I don't think I've seen it in the report, but I may have missed it. What is the percentage spent on debt servicing at this moment? And what is the amount projected in the coming years? And also, how does that compare to HRA accounts in comparative authorities?
Okay, so the LGA feedback, I'm not sure we've got that down, Chris.
So formally
you'll know the answer.
Formally, we haven't received that LGA feedback. They did obviously challenge and come back and test us on the HRA business planning because they raised that initially. Our position is that we do have a sustainable HRA business plan. We do have some challenges within the MTFP horizon that we're managing. One of their observations was that we didn't have 125% debt coverage, and we expect to resolve that over the course of the MTFP in conjunction with the answer to your next question, which was around the landlord options appraisal. So that's been through scrutiny. Identified in that report are some fairly significant savings that can be achieved by bringing those two models together, and we will revise the budget accordingly if that goes through executive on the 11th. Sorry, dates changed, of course. So if that goes through, we expect to see a full run rate saving of around £3.45 million per annum. So that will be remodelled post decision. That will then allow us to achieve the 125% debt coverage, and then we also make voluntary revenue provision through the HRA to pay down debt. So it will contribute quite significantly. And again, the scrutiny report refers to over the 30-year business plan horizon of that debt reducing to around 100 million. So that is contained within that report.
And I think Clive won that by a short head.
Happy to fight for so on that, obviously on the general fund, we talk about a 10% benchmark of net revenue spend, and that's fine, and we keep within the general fund. On the HRA, we're seeing spend percentage rise from 10% now, around 10%, up to around 18% at the peak, which of course is a short-term risk. So what we're doing by spending as much on the capital programme is we are putting risk into the programme. It's impacting both that percentage and the interest cover that we've referred to as well in the short term. The mitigation against that risk is if there are problems emerge elsewhere on the HRA, we would have to cut back on that programme, slow it down, etc., to keep within those parameters. So it is very much a short-term thing that will live with those numbers. But the ideal and where we need to get to within the 30-year business plan at the end of the day is 125% interest cover, and that borrowing as a percentage coming down in relative terms. Of course, the more we spend on servicing debt in the HRA, the less money there is available for things like management and maintenance of the stock. So it's a trade-off between the two things, and we need to get those risks right. So we are short-term adding to the risks a little bit, but it's manageable within the parameters that we have.
Thank you, Liz. Do you want to add anything? No.
There's just one other part to that, Chair.
Yeah, I was just trying to work out whether we'd answered all your questions. We answered them all.
There's the last part of the debt one, which you don't have to give now, but it'll be interesting to understand how it compares to other comparative councils, that debt servicing level. If it can come to full council, that'd be great.
We can provide it in writing for you. Thank you.
Okay. Not seeing any. Mr. Dingle, you become a member of the press. Well, I'm sorry. I've made you the spotlight in your subtlety. My apologies. Sorry, I was just taken aback. See you to my left. Any other questions from members on the room or online? Tom Power.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this is literally a really quick one. I completely lost it. I know I've seen it before, but regarding the tenant impact, what was the average weekly rent increase in pound terms? Anyone know? I think I've read it before, but just wanted to know.
Apologies, it'll be in the report somewhere, but I'll highlight it and send it across to you.
Okay. Are we all done? Are we all in? Superb. Okay, so we have a marathon of recommendations and amendments. So first of all, on E, we are amending April 26th to April 27. I got that right, Kerry. Thank you. Is everyone happy with that amendment? Just to take that as read. Thank you. So we are asked to approve the rent setting for 26-27. And if you look through recommendations A to D, all of those are 4.8% based on each of those different criteria. Are we content with those? And then we go on to the one that we've amended, which is the convergence with the government's policy direction. We then turn the page. We've got our fees and charges increases for garages, meeting halls, guest rooms and service charges all set out in the papers. And those are delegated for us to approve. Okay, and then we move on to those that are recommended for council to approve, which is the HRA annual revenue budget for 26-27, the HRA capital programme of 281.337 million to be spent 25 to 31. The delegated authority to the Chief Finance Officer to approve the capital financing. And then D, E and F are all delegated authorities to the Executive Director, the Chief Finance Officer and the lead member for each of those business plans and the social housing scheme. G is to note and approve the recommendation of the Chief Finance Officer to maintain a minimum balance of the HRA general reserves of at least 6.162 million, the equivalent of 10% of the gross income budget for 26-27, approximately 650 per property. To note the rent setting and fee charges for 26-27 as we've just approved, we will have just approved, and to note the updated medium-term financial plan to up to 31, and to note the updated 30-year business plan in Appendix K. So that's run through all those recommendations. Oh, Clive, you've spotted something, have you?
No, not spotted anything. Just to clarify for members about why some are approved and why are note. It's because the tenants have to receive their rent increase letter with 28 days clear notice. And now with the council being on the date it is, it would not allow time for the production and receipt of those letters. So hence you're being asked to approve the rents early, but the rest of the budget is being considered alongside the main MTFP.
Thank you for that clarification, which for some people will have been a reminder, but for others will have been a useful context. Can I see a proposer, please, from Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts, seconded by Councillor Wakefield? All those in favour? All those against? Thank you so much. Kerry, thank you so much for all of this. And behind this lies a huge amount of work from you and your team, and we are very appreciative of all you do to support our tenants and the communities in which they live. So thank you so much. And finally, we move on to agenda item 10, which is our admission arrangements for voluntary controlled and community schools for 27-28, which is pages 307 to 318 of the papers. And Councillor Heather Shearer to introduce, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. I'm hoping, I'm just reflecting, I think it's the third time I've done this, because every year we do come to you with this recommendation and ask for the approval. We are obliged every year to set out our admissions policies, if you like, for not this coming September, but the one after, because the one September we did last year. So it's come to you as it normally does. Phil's here to give any more information and detail on it, but essentially not much has really changed at all. Nothing, I don't think, with regard to the detail of the actual admissions criteria themselves. And it also just includes, as you can see on the first page, there are 4 schools where we're recommending that their published admission number, their PAN numbers are going down, simply because to reflect the kind of role that they have. You know, chat while he just moves about, lovely man, he's coming up. So those admission numbers have been reduced principally to allow those schools to actually manage their own budgets and their own resourcing based on the reality of the numbers of children they have in the schools. Having that PAN number makes it easy for them to manage. So I'll pass over to Phil for anything I have missed out, but I'm hoping it's, I don't want to say uncontentious or straightforward, but it is a simpler paper than certainly than the one we followed. So thank you for comprehension.
Good morning, Phil. Good afternoon, rather.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you, Heather. Yes, it's just the annual determination of our admission arrangements for local authority maintained schools. We still have 89 schools for which we are the admission authority, and we've made 4 changes, reduction of PANs to 4 primary schools, just to allow those schools to restructure their staffing ahead of falling roles and mitigate the potential financial impact of having too big a staff structure for too few children. We undertook the statutory consultation between the 24th of November and the 1st of January. We had 2 responses. One was a question around prioritising distance in the oversubscription criteria, which we already do. So nearest first is one of our determining factors in oversubscription criteria, which reduces the mileage distance to schools. And the second question was around a proposal to adjust our school catchments, particularly the secondary school catchments around Taunton. Given that those Taunton secondaries are academies, the local authority cannot change the catchment of those schools. But for information, we did facilitate a conversation between 2 local multi-academy trusts, and that will result in a change of catchment to the south of the town, where a part of the area will become a dual catchment to ensure that children in the south of the Castle School catchment are likely to get into Bishop Fox's, which would also be their nearest school. That's it, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that update, Phil. So it impacts just those 4 schools, and we've mediated an outcome with those secondary schools in Taunton. Okay, thank you. That all sounds straightforward. Sarah.
Well, for someone who hasn't had children at school for quite some time now, really, I'm completely out of date with this. I'm very interested to hear what you say about, and again, you said it publicly just now, that we can meet with multi-academy trusts or academy trusts and ask them, but we can't actually change the catchment, which makes it very difficult if they refuse to help, does it not? And I don't understand how a council is meant to work where people go to school and to try and make sure that, as you say, nearest first and all the rest of it, so that we don't have to bus people all over the place. When building happens, more people move into an area, so it changes the population, and then you might be busing people in because that school doesn't want to change its catchment. I think this is a nonsense. I think we should still remain in control of the catchment areas, notwithstanding the schools being in academy trusts. But the other thing I want to say is that I'm glad to see that with those schools where they have perhaps got falling roles, I guess it makes them easier to plan if they know how many people they should be expecting, and they can that works out with their budgets because they only get paid per pupil, don't they? So they wouldn't be expecting more. But no, it just seems to me madness that we as the Education Authority cannot control where people go to school anymore.
You might very well think that, I think, is the response, and I'm very tempted to get on my education soapbox now, but that is the way that we have a education system which is fractured amongst various multiple academy trusts and single academy trusts. I think I'm correct in saying there's only 1 secondary school in our purview at the moment, or is that? There's one on the way out, isn't there? Wasn't sure whether it's in the departure lounge or whether it's actually flown the nest now. So yeah, we are in that position, particularly with secondary, and that's where the model has got to be about around making sure that our education providers are collaborative in their approach, that we've got that relationship with them, and that's where it's been really successful, bringing in those relationship managers with with schools and with the system to be able to get the system into a better place to be able to manage these tensions, I think is probably the easier way of saying that. Phil, do you want to add anything to my thoughts there? And Fed?
I've got two questions. Oh, I've got one question, I guess one comment that might be a question. I guess for me, it's around, I was under the impression, Phil, that birth rates, particularly in the North and Taunton area, were kind of staying growing or staying the same. They weren't falling, particularly because we've got pressures in Taunton and Bridgewater. I guess that by reducing these numbers, we've worked out how movement can still go round and still be kind of looked after, because they are within those kind of areas. I think 3, I'm not sure where Vallis First School is, apologies. And then my second question, it would be remiss of me not to say, as the local ward member that kind of represents Taunton East, which actually sits within the Monkton catchment, but actually many of the students look to go to Bishop Fox's. I did, and living, growing in that area. So I do think that there is going to be parents that are going to be impacted by that change of catchment. But as Councillor Wakefield so eloquently put, we have limited control, but I believe that the numbers are only potentially going to be small there. But I'm wondering, will there be communication or anything that helps those parents realise that actually they still may unlikely get Bishop Fox's? Yes, they don't live in the catchment, but if you lived near Leisure Way, you probably expected to get in.
Anything to add to that question? Oh, by the way, Vallis First School, I believe, is Frome. Yeah, and I'm aware that there are just a very soft conversation around the 3-tier system. I believe in Frome as well, between the partners there, just to look forward as to what's the best system in that area. Anything to add to those thoughts, particularly?
So yeah, just to pick up on the question that was embedded in the first element, that where we are reducing PANS, it's because we are confident we can essentially take that capacity out of play for the moment. And if we look at those schools, we've got Oak, Bradford and Ninehead, which is kind of to the west of Wellington, where we have lots of relatively small primary schools and not enough children to fill all of the places there. Then we have Vallis First School in Frome, and because of the introduction of the Steiner Free School probably 10 or 12 years ago, which is now Avanti Park Primary School deemed middle because it has a Key Stage 3, we have a significant oversupply of school places in the Frome system. But through the next few months and after half term, we will launch an informal consultation around a potential move to a 2-tier system in Frome. If the community comes back and says it has appetite for such a move, we will then go back in the summer with a detailed proposal about converting some of those mainstream places to specialist places, allowing us to meet need up in that corner of the county. Then we've got Catcott Primary School, so between Bridgewater and Street, out in our rural areas where we're seeing a real drop off in our birth rates. And on birth rates specifically, many times we've been here and spoke about how from a peak in 2011, our birth rates have continued to drop. And in our 2024 data, which came out in October 25, we saw our lowest rate in kind of recent recorded history. That's coupled with the housing data, where in 24-25, I think we had just over 1,300 new builds, which was our lowest new build rate for something like 20 years. So we have falling birth rates and we have slow delivery of houses, much slower than the projections that we calculate our projections on. So we are seeing school rolls drop quite significantly in some parts of the county.
Indeed, but also very aware of the housing targets that we are very aware. I know Councillor Rigby's been quite vocal about those numbers in the future, and that will feed through. So we don't want to be in a position where we're reducing numbers and then trying to build new schools in the future. So it's going to be a very managed pattern, and it is the changing pattern of demographics here is quite fascinating. I'm told, and I'm hoping this is right. We're getting better data from our friends and colleagues in the NHS now that is helping us to look at those projected population changes as well. Is that my understanding?
That's correct, Chair. Yeah.
That's good to know, and it shows the importance of that partnership and collaboration that we can land some of those things. Okay, right. I think that's been more of a discussion than I was expecting. Any other members in the room want to raise anything? Thanks, Diogo.
Thanks, Chair. It's just in similar vein as to what's been said already, but around the Hamp Nursery School, that's a third reduction in admission places here. And it's really my concern, and hopefully you'll alleviate those concerns, is around the increasing number of developments in and around Bridgwater and the education placement requirements that are put on housing developers, etc. And just that there's a narrative in the public, and we all know, of our residents, that all these houses coming in now, they may look at us and say you're cutting places, which I know is not the case. And I'm just wondering how you manage that communication, perhaps, and also that storytelling. And one other question, because I don't know, is can numbers go up as well as down?
Oh, from my career, yes.
Thanks, Diogo. Like you, I live in Bridgwater, so acutely aware of the building pressures there. I think there are two parts. The house building isn't coming forward as quickly as kind of was projected 4, 5, 6 years ago when we entered into a range of planning agreements, and also that the combination of that and the birth rate, seeing pupil numbers drop. And if we look at Bridgwater, for September 26 this year, we have 90 empty reception year places across our. So what we have to do is manage the plans down so our schools don't have artificially low class numbers, which then creates a viability issue. And all we're doing is kind of taking that space out of circulation temporarily. So if we do see numbers pick up, because we know we've got developments at Kingsdown, the Green Wedge along the eastern part of town, we are progressing the school for the Wilstock development, because that will stretch south to a point where they are out of walking distance Hamp School. And if we look at parental preference for this year, only 2 of Bridgwater primary schools, or Bridgwater's primary schools, have been oversubscribed. So we are seeing a change in where families are taking their children. Even with Hamp, many of the parents there try to get their children into Somerset Bridge, and because Somerset Bridge is one of the 2 oversubscribed schools, we'd expect those children to push back into Hamp and fill their second class. What we're seeing in North Peverton for the first time is North Peverton filling to pan with North Peverton children, whereas historically children from the south of Bridgwater pushed out by preference.
Indeed, and just to be pedantic, Councillor Rodriguez actually lives in the North Peverton division, but let's not let that get in the way. But yes, all 3 schools in my patch are oversubscribed, and we're very aware that the pattern of development and the infrastructure that's followed has been a long-running saga in that area, and that capacity that is there in Bridgwater may well be brought back into use in future time, and it's just got to be managed so that the schools' budgets and staffing requirements are managed as well going forward. So it's a complicated pattern, and I'm confident that it is well managed. Not seeing anybody else. Go on then, Heather.
Really, really quick, just to say, it's just another example, I think, within this kind of education system and to a degree in social care generally, is where we have an accountability for something over which we have very little direct control. So it's just played out beautifully there as an issue.
Yeah, it's an interesting model of what local authorities are and aren't responsible for in terms of education because of the direction of travel of national policy. But let's not let that get in the way of this paper here. So we've got recommendations to agree the admission arrangements for local authority, voluntary controlled and community primary schools for the 27-28 academic year set out in the report. This is proposed by Councillor Heather Shearer and seconded by Councillor Liz Lashon. Those in favour, please. Those against. That's clearly carried. Believe there's no other business. Phil, thank you so much to you and your team for all the hard work that goes into this. Colleagues, thank you so much for your contributions today. Do appreciate that we've managed to get the meeting finished actually 10 minutes early. So do appreciate, enjoy those 10 minutes, and I'll see you at our next meeting, which is on Wednesday, the 25th of February. February is a double header of executive meetings, and there's something important coming up at that meeting. I can't remember what it is. Never mind. We'll look forward to it when we see the agenda. Okay, take care, everybody.